In this video, we will be discussing the Envirothon study topic of aquatic ecology. The purpose of this video is to provide an overview of each of the aquatic ecology objectives. It is not all-inclusive. Please use your study materials, coach, and other resources to get a full picture of each objective and topic.
In this video, we will discuss agencies and laws, watersheds, pollution, assessing water quality, organisms and tolerance, types of freshwater resources, hydrology and the water cycle, water distribution and its states, sources of pollution, and how citizens can prevent it.
First, we'll cover assisting agencies and laws that govern Indiana's waters. There are 20 key agencies, organizations, and programs working on clean water in Indiana, which can be found in this document compiled by Purdue University, which you can access through this link, as well as in the resource guide. Let's discuss just a couple of the key players. The United States Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, is responsible for carrying out the Clean Water Act. This includes regulations of point sources, as well as providing financial and technical support to voluntary watershed management. Soil and water conservation districts are formed by petition to address specific water-related issues in a particular geographic area. Conservation districts address issues such as flood prevention and control, improving drainage, organizing irrigation, water supply, treatment and distribution, the handling of sewage and wastes, the development of forest wildlife areas, parks and recreational facilities, and much more. They are led and supported by the State Department of Agriculture.
Now we will discuss watersheds, which is the second objective. According to the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, a watershed is an area of land that collects and drains water from high points or hills to low points or valleys. Any area that drains water to one location is a watershed. As you can see in the diagram, this movement of water can include rainfall, snowmelt, and runoff collecting in a common body of water. It can vary greatly in size, from a small area that drains into a creek to water from multiple states draining into the Mississippi River, or even multiple countries draining into the Atlantic Ocean. Watersheds of all sizes are important because they supply us with water for various uses, in addition to providing habitat for animals, insects, and plants. However, when water enters the watershed too quickly for the land to absorb it, such as during severe storms, flooding can occur. The large amounts of impervious surfaces in urban areas can further exacerbate these issues as they shed water more quickly, while forested and grassy areas are able to absorb more water. Now we will cover Objective 3, which is water pollution. Water pollution is often broken into two categories. First is point source water pollution, which means the direct contamination of waterways. You can remember this by the pollution being from a specific place you can point to. For example, this might include a factory pouring industrial waste into a river. If left unregulated, point source pollution can result in water pollution, unsafe drinking water, activity restrictions such as on fishing and swimming, and harmful conditions for wildlife. The second type of water pollution is non-point source water pollution. This refers to contamination of waterways that does not originate from a single clear source. For example, this may include motor oil leaked onto parking lots, plastic grocery bags, pesticides, fertilizers, and detergents. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, it is one of the most significant threats to aquatic ecosystems in the U.S. However, since it comes from so many sources and locations, it can be difficult to control. If left untreated, the pollutants wash into waterways, infiltrating groundwater, streams, and rivers, and eventually ending in the ocean. Not only does this affect the ecosystems and wildlife along the way, but it can also create dead zones in the ocean and damage coral reef ecosystems. Further, it can diminish the physical and environmental well-being of these areas, making them unappealing for human use and resulting in potentially major financial losses. Along with this, there's a vast array of water pollution types. 4 of the main areas to consider are organic water pollution, which is the pollution of waterways with chemicals that are carbon-based. This often includes pesticides, herbicides, oil, and other contaminants. Inorganic water pollution is the pollution of waterways with chemicals that are not carbon-based. This often includes things like heavy metals, acids, and salts. Thermal water pollution is when a human activity, such as operating dams, discharging wastewater into rivers, etc., raises water temperature in aquatic ecosystems to unhealthy levels. According to the U.S. Forest Service, this can stress ecosystems, kill fish, and promote disease and parasites, which can cause major problems for the health of the ecosystem. And finally, toxic water pollution. According to the EPA, this occurs when water bodies are contaminated with pollutants that upon exposure can cause health concerns including death, disease, cancer, genetic mutations, and more.
This section covers methods for assessing water quality in all types of bodies. Please read Chapter 5 of the EPA Water Monitoring and Assessment Guide for guidance on how to conduct water tests and interpret data for assessing water quality. Numerous aquatic organisms live in Indiana's waterways, and according to a species' tolerance to pollutants, insight into the health and status of a waterway can be gleaned. Please read Chapter 5 of the IDEM Hoosier River Watch Volunteer Monitoring Manual for a biological monitoring data sheet featuring prominent aquatic organisms in Indiana and their pollution tolerance levels, as well as guidance on how to fill out this sheet and how to interpret it in relation to the health of a water body. Next, we'll discuss the numerous types of freshwater resources found in the state. A lake is a relatively large body of slow-moving or standing water that occupies an inland basin. They frequently occur in regions once covered by glaciers. A pond is usually smaller and shallower than a lake. All water in a pond is in the photic zone, while lakes have aphotic zones, or regions where the light does not reach. The amount of sunlight in a pond may cause excessive plant growth on the water surface and within the water column. Ponds also usually have smaller waves than lakes. A reservoir is an artificial lake where water is stored. Most are formed by constructing dams across rivers, but can also be formed from a natural lake whose outlet has been dammed to control the water level. The dam controls the amount of water that flows out of the reservoir. There are many different types and uses for reservoirs. A river is an extremely biodiverse, ribbon-like body of water that flows downhill from the force of gravity towards a larger water body, such as a lake or ocean. They can exist on the surface or in caves. A stream is a short, usually continuous body of running water. Rivers are larger than streams, with streams being typically less than 15 meters or 50 feet wide. A wetland is an area inundated with water for at least part of the year. A wetland is defined by 3 distinguishing characteristics: wetland hydrology, hydric soils, and hydrophytic vegetation. There are numerous types of wetlands, such as fens, marshes, bogs, and swamps. Groundwater is water held underground in the soil or in pores and crevices in rock. It's often stored in aquifers made of porous materials such as gravel, sand, sandstone, or fractured rock like limestone. Groundwater is recharged by water seeping downwards through the land surface, which is typically used by humans faster than it can be recharged.
The 7th objective that we will cover is hydrology and the water cycle. Hydrology is the study of the properties of Earth's water. The natural water cycle can be broken down into 5 basic processes: evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, and runoff. Each main process has several subcomponents and considerations. At its core, the 5 basic processes can be explained as follows. Firstly, evaporation is the change of state in a substance from a liquid to a gas. Transpiration is the evaporation of water from plants through stomata, which are small openings in the leaves that plants use to get CO2. Condensation is the process whereby water vapor is changed into a liquid state. In the atmosphere, condensation may appear as clouds or dew. Precipitation is when tiny condensation particles grow too large for the rising air to support, and thus fall to the earth. Precipitation can be in the form of rain, hail, snow, or sleet, and is the primary way we receive fresh water on Earth. Finally, runoff occurs when there is excessive precipitation and the ground cannot absorb any more water. Rivers and lakes are results of runoff. Some runoff evaporates into the atmosphere, but most water in rivers and lakes returns to the oceans. This USGS diagram shows many of the components and subcomponents that make up the water cycle. When adding in human considerations and impacts, the water cycle can begin to get much more complex to map and understand. Humans impact the natural processes by redirecting rivers, storing water in dams, draining wetlands for development, and much more.
Next, we will be discussing distribution and states of water. You should be familiar with the distribution of the Earth's water and understand water's changing states and processes of the water cycle. Water is very abundant, covering 75% of the Earth's surface. Water can be stored in the atmosphere, on the land surface, and below the ground. Water vapor is a gas stored in atmospheric moisture. Fresh water is stored in liquid form in freshwater lakes, artificial reservoirs, rivers, and wetlands. In addition, water can be stored in solid frozen form in ice sheets, glaciers, and snowpacks. Lastly, liquid water can be stored below ground in aquifers as groundwater. Water can change between the 3 states of a solid, liquid, and a gas, and moves between the atmosphere and surface through evaporation, evapotranspiration, and precipitation. Across the surface, water moves through snowmelt, runoff, and stream flow. Below ground, water moves through infiltration and groundwater recharge. We will now be discussing sources of pollution. You should be able to identify and understand the interaction of segments of a community where water pollution can occur. Water pollution can occur through 5 main segments of a community. The first segment is commercial. Pollution can enter local waterways when dirt, oil, and debris from parking lots and paved areas are washed into the storm sewer system. The second segment is agriculture. A lack of vegetation on stream banks can lead to erosion, and overgrazed pastures can contribute to excessive amounts of sediment being washed into local water bodies. Excess fertilizer and pesticides can poison aquatic animals and cause algal blooms, and livestock in streams can contaminate water with bacteria. The third segment is forestry. Improperly managed logging operations can result in erosion and sedimentation. The fourth segment is construction. When erosion controls aren't properly maintained, sediment and debris can be carried into the storm system. In addition, construction vehicles can leak fuel, oil, and harmful fluids that could be carried into the stormwater system. The fifth segment is automotive facilities. Uncovered fueling stations allow spills to be washed into storm drains, and cars waiting to be repaired can leak fuel, oil, and harmful fluids that can be washed into water bodies.
Lastly, we'll discuss the numerous ways that citizens can prevent non-point source pollution. The following is a handful of the easiest methods. Dispose of oil and household chemicals properly by utilizing local toxic drop-off sites, maintaining vehicles to reduce leaks, and never pour any materials down a storm drain. Be sure to maintain your septic tanks. Find alternative ways to water livestock, as well as blocking animals from directly accessing natural water bodies to avoid zoonotic disease contamination. Implement rotational grazing for your farm animals. Reduce sediment runoff from agricultural fields by planting buffer strips and cover crops, and utilizing reduced tillage practices. Reduce nutrient runoff from fields by using best management practices for fertilizers, not storing manure in the open for long periods, and not exceeding a soil's nutrient needs with fertilizer. Create and enhance riparian corridors by allowing natural growth, adding trees and bushes, and not mowing. Pick up the waste your pets produce. Use lawn and garden fertilizer wisely by reading the labels and following the directions, using fertilizer with no or low amounts of phosphorus for established lawns, only using starter fertilizer when you're growing grass from seeds, and avoiding over-application. Give water more places to go by planting a rain garden, connecting downspouts to rain barrels, and using porous pavement. Think before you dig. Construction sites that disturb 1 or more acres of land are required to use best management practices to keep sediment out of water bodies. Reseed and replant bare ground as soon as possible when disturbing soil. This concludes the video. Again, please utilize your study materials, coach, and other resources to review each objective and topic in detail.